the May meeting of the Board of Trustees.
Can you wait just a second? I'm going live on YouTube.
Okay. As soon as Marcia is ready, we will have roll call. Everybody enjoying?
Okay, we're good to go.
Okay, we now will call to order the May 27th meeting of the Board of Trustees of PARTA and ask for the roll call, please.
Ms. Biergard?
Here.
Mr.
Oh,
Childer?
Southern Portage County here.
Ms. Davison?
City of Ravenna here.
Mr. Ginn?
Middle Portage County here.
Mr. Mansfield?
Franklin Township here in miniature.
Mr. Murphy?
Jack Murphy, City of Kent.
Ms. Tipton?
Morgan Tipton, City of Kent.
Mr. Vitale? Ms. Wise?
Karen, unmute.
That's okay.
Mr. Woods?
Marvin Woods, Streetsboro.
Ms. Amrine?
Claudia Amrine, PARTA.
Ms. Baba?
Denise Babel, PARTA.
Marcia Fletcher, PARTA. Ms. Jurish?
Kelly Jurish, PARTA.
Ms. Reese?
Hello, Michelle Reese, Rexland Andrus.
Mr. Popick?
Clay Topic, PARTA.
Ms. Schrader?
Rebecca Schrader, PARTA.
Mr. Troutman?
Brian Troutman, PARTA.
Ms. Beck?
I'm here, Kent, Ohio.
Thank you.
Virginia Harris, Streetsboro.
Thank you.
Did you get Mr. Vitale?
Grandma muted.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad everybody could be here. And if you will, we're glad to have Michelle here representing Justin Markey, who has another commitment last night. So Michelle, thank you. If we have any legal questions, I'm sure Justin said you would be ready and able.
That's correct.
If you can please mute your computer and then unmute it when we need a vote or something like that. Appreciate that. The first item of business will be the minutes from the April 2nd, 2021 meeting. We need a motion for approval.
I'll make that.
Marge made the motion.
I'll
Jeff
second.
Childers will second that.
Morgan Tipton seconded. Are there any questions or any discussion? If not, all those who approve, press down your space bar so you unmute and say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Say no. That motion passes. There's no guest communication because of the COVID-19. And at the end of the meeting, just before the adjournment, we will talk a little bit about what we're going to do going forward. Claudia sent out the general manager's report, and I'm sure you have a copy of that. Claudia, do you have anything to add?
Hi, thank you. Welcome, everybody. And welcome, Michelle. It's nice to put a face to a name. I've been working with Michelle on the ROB Phoenix matter for some months. And so it's nice to have you here with Justin unable to attend. I just want to say a few brief comments. Curtis Baker just texted me that he is having internet problems, so he's trying to get back on. So we may need to adjust our schedule a little depending on how long that might take.
Right.
Other than that, I think wasn't a whole lot to report this month, other than the new development that happened just last week. In the city of Kent, trying to move forward with the vacant Cutler space. So that's good news, and we're moving ahead with that.
Just a moment. Virginia, can you please mute your
Hold on.
Virginia? Oh, thank
I'll
you.
try. I'll try.
That's okay. If you could mute your microphone. Thank you so much.
Got it.
And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
No.
Claudia, I'm glad that you sent the obituary for the two bus drivers. It's a sad time when we lost two people, Daryl Frazier and Michael Ann Blaston. And thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Yes.
Yeah, Daryl was a foreman, our mechanic, day shift foreman, bus mechanic, and been with us for about 20 years. And so we're very sad about his passing very suddenly. And then Michelle, as you may remember, had cancer. So it's been a rough month.
Yes.
Yes. Well, thank you. We'll remember them.
Thank you.
Very
And any other questions?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
And I see Curtis is back, so I think we're good to go.
Hi, Curtis.
I apologize about that.
Okay, it happens. Well, then let's move on to the committee reports. The administration committee did not meet. The finance committee met, and Jeff Childers is going to give the report from that committee.
Yes, thank you, Dave. We met Tuesday and went over the reports that have been submitted by Rebecca Schrader. And there wasn't a whole lot going on. I'll start with the PARTA side of things. And PARTA is tracking along rather smoothly here. We are working at a surplus, and we haven't taken any money from the state capital maintenance funds or from the federal capital maintenance assistance funds. And so we've got money coming in that just hasn't been drawn down yet. So that's makes things look even better. Expenses were pretty much where they're supposed to be. And really, the PARTA side of things is going very well. The gateway, we're looking at a $174 surplus for the year at this point in time, and things are moving along there. Parking in the deck is catching up slowly. It seems to be tracking almost identically for the last 4 years, and this year is no exception. So the gateway is doing well. One other thing I'd mention on the gateway is that we are collecting money from the city of Kent and Burbick on rent. So that's coming in handy. There's $32,000 worth of money that we hope to collect this year as rent. And so far we're right on track for that. So we did pretty well on all those things. One thing we also went over was the 3 resolutions that we're going to hear tonight. And I won't get into the specifics on that. I'm sure there'll be questions and talk from other people, but the finance committee has voted unanimously to recommend that the board pass each of those resolutions. Other than that, there wasn't a whole lot going on there.
Are there any questions for the finance committee? Hearing none, we'll move on. The operations committee and personnel committee did not have a need to meet this month. And so we'll go on to new business. Before we do the resolutions, I'll point out that doing these resolutions and many of the resolutions, we work through AMETS, and we talk about AMETS all the time, and it would be good for the board members to know a little bit more about what AMETS is, what it does, and to meet the head of it all, Curtis Baker. So I'm going to ask Claudia, would you please introduce Mr. Baker?
Sure, thank you. Curtis Baker is the director of the Akron Metropolitan Area Transportation Study, known as AMETS. He was named director in December of 2016. He has served as the AMETS planning administrator prior to that for 5 years and has been with AMETS for 15 years total. As AMETS director, Curtis is responsible for overseeing the administration of the agency, which includes a budget of $1.8 million for planning and a $13 million a year infrastructure program budget. Curtis also serves as the vice chair of the Summit County Transportation Improvement District. He holds a master's of city and regional planning from The Ohio State University and a bachelor's degree in organizational leadership from Miami University. I've enjoyed working with Curtis a long time, and typically in a non-pandemic world, we would have Curtis over in April or May to do a breakfast, which we've done for a number of years for our Portage County partners in AMETS. And we haven't been able to do that in 2020 or 2021. So we thought it would be a great way to have him explain more to some of our newer members, just give an overview of AMETS, and then hopefully we'll be back on track next year and can invite everyone to that breakfast. So Curtis, thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you very much. And, I'd like to thank the board for taking the time, and Claudia and her team. I think, we believe at AMETS that PARTA is in great hands. And, it's been obviously, I think, for all of us, a challenging time. And what I wanted to do today was just talk a little bit about who we are, what we do. Sometimes we're sort of the agency that's in the background a little bit, and that's fine. But we do play a pretty critical role in, planning, transportation funding, and also, really looking at long-range trends and demographics of what we can expect. And then, so if you don't mind, I do have a presentation and I was going to share my screen. I hope that's okay. Can everyone see this here? I just want to make sure we're good. Working. Thank you. I got a thumbs up, so we're good. Yeah, so, tonight I just wanted to talk a little bit about, about what AMETS is. I want to talk a little bit about our planning process. And then I'm going to talk about our long-range plan that actually our board, which PARTA sits on, just approved actually last week at our board meeting. So really, what is AMETS? AMETS is a metropolitan planning organization, and we serve Greater Akron. And Greater Akron is Summit County, Portage County, and actually 2 townships in cities in Wayne County, Doylestown and Rittman area in Wayne County. Our major responsibilities include: we develop a long-range plan, we oversee the expenditure of federal transportation funds, we coordinate transportation improvements with our friends at Federal Highway, FTA, ODOT, as well as local officials. And our board is actually 45 members large. So, and our board is composed of mayors and city managers, transit, of all the communities in our region. And then also our transit operators and our county commissioners in Portage County, and Summit County gets 3 representatives because of their executive-based system. But so having that many people at the table, and as Claudia referred to, non-COVID times, it's always a great opportunity to talk about transportation policy too. And we have advocated to the state on behalf of transit funding, on behalf of increase of gas tax for infrastructure funding, and those types of things. So we do feel like we have a very good group of board members that want to discuss those issues. Basically, where all of our funding comes from is the federal gas tax. So every time, and I know we've probably all read a little bit about the infrastructure package that's currently being negotiated between the House, the Senate, Republicans, Democrats. But basically what happens is there's currently an 18.5-cent gas tax that since 1993 has been in place that goes to the federal, that's the federal tax. There's also a state tax for gas tax, which was just increased. So what AMETS gets is they get, when we send all that gas tax to the federal government, then they distribute it back to all the states and also to metropolitan planning organizations. And the reason they do this is that, some of you are probably aware that in the 50s and 60s, state departments of highways and departments of transportation started just building highways everywhere and started doing it without sort of the local buy-in from, cities like Akron, Fair Lawn, Kent, and that kind of necessitated this need for some local control over federal dollars. And so what AMETS is we really are the regional voice that says, yes, ODOT, you can do this, or no, you can't. And the way that we do that is through our long-range plan and our transportation improvement program. And what our long-range plan basically is, if it's not identified on our plan, it cannot be funded with federal dollars in the region. And so what that has been able to do is it gives local community a lot more control. And then on top of that, they also give us our own budget allocation. So not only can we help kind of tell ODOT what to do, or at least make sure we concur with what ODOT's doing on the highway side, we also are able to say, hey, and we as a region want to invest this money, in this specific way. And so for us, our policies have traditionally been kind of fix it first, not only for highways, but also for transit. And for those of you, too, when I refer to highways, I don't just mean freeways. We kind of sometimes use highways as a catch-all term for pretty much all the major roadways, like arterial network, minor collectors, all those goofy names that we have. So as I kind of mentioned, we're made up by the policy committee. We have a technical committee, we have a citizens committee, and then we have our staff. And we do a bunch of studies and programs that, we try to get the public engaged, get our members engaged in different types of planning activities. So to discuss a little bit about the planning process, it's a 4-year process. Every 4 years, we do a new long-range plan. And during that 4 years, we analyze the system, we go into regional demographics and trends that shape the future, and we try to engage the public through just multiple initiatives that to get feedback on what the public wants for our transportation system. In our last planning forecast, or our last planning round of our 4-year cycle, we complete documents that relate to congestion. We do a crash report every year. We do an active transportation plan for bicycles and pedestrians, a freight plan, a transit plan that we do in concert with PARTA and Metro. And then we also do a preservation plan. So when we do things like that, like our preservation plan, we actually, try to estimate how much is it going to cost over the next 25 years or 24 years to just maintain the system as is, to maintain our system. And that's, roughly $4.5 billion just to do that in our region. And that's just milling and filling, bus replacements, all those things, just keeping it as is getting more expensive all the time. When I talk about some of the engagement we do 6 standing public meetings per year that kind of are in concert with our board meetings. We've done better blocks, which I know Kent actually did a better block that has led to a project on, I believe, North Water Street. North Water Street that we're really excited about. We helped volunteer on that event. We do bike and brainstorms where, we have public officials get out on bikes and ride with members of the public to discuss about, safety opportunities. We're actually trying to develop, and we've been talking to Clayton about actually doing a bus and brainstorm where we potentially can have people ride the bus with elected, and talk about what their needs are and what are some of the things that are good and bad. We've done Move with the Mayor, where mayors were on bikes riding. Jane's Walk, if anyone knows who Jane Jacobs is, she was very instrumental in planning and talking about the life and death of cities. And then recently we did a speed table program in Akron where we were testing things, trying to slow down cars on residential streets. So, we really try to do a lot of things and be involved in a lot of things. And what our role is to help our members, take the tools that we have and kind of apply them to their situation. And so another example of that before I get to the long range plan is we have a Connecting Communities Planning Grant Program that offers grants to our members for planning studies. And we just awarded PARTA one for $40,000 that we're going to be using to look at the corridor on 59 just outside of Kent. And, we had the opportunity to walk that corridor with Claudia and Clayton. And, it's just what we've found when we engage members of the public, and even for us as planners, is that, when there is a difference, you experience spaces differently when you're in a car, when you're on a bus, when you're on your bike. And it's so important for us who are kind of planning, designing, engineering, and constructing these things to experience that along the way. And so what we try to do in a lot of these engagement things is getting the public and public officials out on the roadways to see some of the challenges, because it's one thing when you drive by a bicyclist and you're going 40 miles an hour in a 5,000 pound machine, but it's another thing to be the bicyclist when the car's driving by you at 45 miles an hour. And so we've been encouraging people to kind of take those experiences that are involved in the type of stuff we do. So, the long range plan, really, it's a 4-year document, and we take all those input documents that we looked at, like safety, transit plan, active transportation, and we put them all together in a big document of recommendations for our region. And a lot of them are very general recommendations. The one we just approved in May that goes to 2045, we're recommending, $7.7 billion in between now and 2045 for recommendations that include highway, bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, and transit infrastructure. And the key thing about our plan from a federal perspective is that it has to be what's called fiscally constrained. So that means we have to do a projection of how much funds we think we're going to receive versus how much we actually versus how much the projects actually cost. So we can't just put everything we want on a wish list and say it's on the plan. We actually have to do a budget, which can get actually pretty dicey when you get out there, because you can always be really confident about things like inflation, but you can't quite be as confident about your revenue increases, and so that's one of the challenges. And I know when we worked with our RTAs, trying to do that in this environment where we had seen transit ridership plummet, and trying to understand, how much of that comes back and how quickly does it come back over the course of 24 years, is really a challenge, and it makes us think about how to use our resources. So for our transit recommendations, and I just thought I would highlight this because, you are a board of a transit agency. There's about $2.4 billion in investment. The main priority for us with our funds is fixing it first. AMATS helps manage, or through AMATS, we manage the 5307 program. That we work hand in hand with PARTA and Metro in distributing those funds and having the RTA spend them. But Metro RTA is very interested in bus rapid transit. I know PARTA's had some discussions looking at micro transit ideas. We've been talking more and more about coordination. I think PARTA's been on the lead with that, looking at how to work with other transit agencies and other social service agencies to coordinate. And then again, with the BRT, or bus rapid transit, Metro is really interested in developing transit-oriented development. Sort of ironically, Kent already has that transit-oriented development around the gateway, with the development that's happened around it with the apartments, as well as the corporate offices at Davy Tree and those types of things. So what you see when we looked at going through all these things, we take sort of a yearly cost, and then we make sure that that's something that we can keep through 2045. It does kind of add in some questions, or when you start thinking about policies and thinking long term, it's important for us in our agency as planners to have, there's that fine line between being an aspirational planner by saying this is exactly what we want, versus being a practical planner and saying, yeah, but this is probably how it's going to happen. And sometimes we find that that's more of a delicate balance than you would think, because you want to recommend in 2045, you want to say we're going to have 0 crashes because all cars will be autonomous, and and no one's going to, there will be no driver error. We're going to eliminate driver error. But the reality is like, we don't know if that's going to happen. Actually the odds are probably against it. But if you talk to, Elon Musk, he'd tell you that that's exactly what's going to happen. So we're always at that line of, we get pushed on one side saying, you're being too conservative, and then we get pushed on another side saying you're reaching too far into the future. And so it's always interesting as we kind of debate some of these issues internally of where we think things will be long term. And kind of my last slide, and I hope I haven't taken too much time, is just, I want to just bring up, and this is definitely more of food for thought, just to kind of explain to you the way we think about things, was sort of the idea of planning in and after pandemic. And I think the obvious challenges while we were going through it, I mean, that came up everything from going to virtual board meetings to, trying to keep people safe and managing our staff in different ways. But then the real challenge is to understand what comes next. We've still seen traffic at peak hours being lower than what it has been in the past. We continue to see freight traffic has been higher, has grown actually this year. And I think everyone can understand why, with the number of Amazon boxes piling up on doorsteps. Transit ridership is a big question of, and maybe not so much, I think PARTA with Kent State hopefully is more insulated on ridership than others, but especially in the large urban areas, they're getting hit very hard. And I know even in Akron, they're still seeing that big reduction of, trying to get people back on the bus. And a lot of that has to do with unemployment and kind of the economic conditions. And then I think, the other thing we've talked about is our downtowns and our suburban office spaces. So, do we come in where all of a sudden do downtowns become more of a place where you live and play versus where you work because more people are working remotely? Or do they go back to kind of the way they were? Or does nobody come back? And then with the suburban office spaces, if say a company like Progressive or like another, that has thousands of office space, square feet of office space, if they decide to never come back, it has a huge ramification on the communities, on the tax base, on sort of the whole way we've built our infrastructure. And so, what we've been trying to do is look at, and our big question that we've been asking internally is just, how much impact can 15 months of changed behavior have over the next 20 years? How much of the stuff that we've changed will continue, and we'll see it continue into the foreseeable future? Right now, it's funny, one day I'll read in the paper that, Chase Bank and others bank CEOs are saying we have to have people back in the office, and then you'll read something from Silicon Valley that says we're getting rid of our offices. And it's hard to know still, even now that we've started to see some return to work or some hybrid models, we know that we're not back to where we were. We know that there's not as many people in downtowns. There's not as many people. I mean, the congestion rates show it. And we know there's not as many people riding the bus to work as there were before. And trying to figure out how those things will impact us. And that's what our work will be over the next 4 years, is really looking at sort of what do we think is going to happen and monitoring those trends very closely. So, with that, I don't want to take up more time. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I hope this at least gave you a little bit of a primer on, what we do from a more of a process perspective, but then also the way that we think about our work, and, how we work with agencies like yours, and like our local communities. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Hey, speak up if anyone has any questions at all. Now is the time. This is a wonderful presentation to know we're a part of AMETS and AMETS is a part of our operation. And Any questions or comments at all?
I'm jealous. What a cool job you have, Mr. Baker. To be always thinking and wrestling with, like, how do we help humans be well in all the spaces that they are and get from one place to another and keep life moving for people. What a really cool, inspirational job you have.
It can be very fun. I mean, as I go through the process, like, we do have the federal government over our shoulders. So, it's not always all fun and games, but, there are some really interesting things to talk about. And when we get into things like pedestrian safety, bike safety, transit safety, the way that people get from buses to storefronts and looking at parking lots and sidewalks and all those things, there's like almost an infinite number of challenges that we face to make things easier, especially for the disabled, for the elderly, and all those things. It is fun to have those discussions, but it's also like, once you have that, when you see the world in a planner's eye, then you can always be critical of something. It's always like, oh, well, that's great, but if they would have just shrunk that a little bit, it would have been a lot safer for, so it's a blessing and a curse, that's for sure.
Yeah, you're ruined.
Yeah.
The plan for 2045 has been in the paper, the Record Courier and the Beacon Journal. I think, is the whole plan available on your website if anybody wants to read all the details?
Absolutely. The whole plan's on the website, and a whole lot of other information, looking at things for a lot of communities, like our transit plan, as well as our all the projects that we're going to be funding over the next 4 years in our TIP, which is our program of funded projects.
How has AMATS looked at the electric cars infrastructure needs and potential for revenue from electric cars, since they don't use gas?
Yeah, the first question I think is interesting because there's a big debate going on right now about who should be responsible for putting in electrical charging stations. And one side of the coin says, let the private sector knows best. Let the private sector, determine where the best place is to put charging stations, and as needed. And then there's another frame of thought that says, hey, we as the government need to make it easier to make EVs more marketable, to get rid of range anxiety, which is basically, for those of you who don't know, range anxiety is the idea of, I can only go 200 miles before I need a charge. And so they feel like there's a group that thinks that they should be just saying, hey, here's the best place to place them. What we've found is that for our work, I think, we're more in the camp of, we'd like the private sector to take the lead on it. When you look at what Tesla has done, basically have tried to eliminate range anxiety by putting their own charging stations up across the United States. And, we think that as the demand continues, we're going to see it happen very quickly. But at the same time, and the flip side of that is that the challenge is that the minute, say, agencies like ours come in and say, hey, you need a charging station right there, you have this, the federal right-of-way requirements, you have even environmental, we can't do anything quickly and easily the way that somebody can on a private property. So it creates challenges. On the fuel side, as you may be aware, in the last gas tax increase that Governor DeWine did, they did increase they put in an increase for drivers of electronic vehicles had to pay an $150 fee, I think it was, with their registration yearly, or it might have been $200 for hybrids, $100 for electrics, or vice versa, flipped, I think. At the federal level, I think we are going to eventually get to a miles traveled model. The push behind it was always, well, people don't want a black box in their car saying where they're going. But the reality is, it's like we're all carrying black boxes in our pockets, and they already know where we're going all the time. And so I think at some point we're going to get to the miles traveled, but more concerned on the federal side, what they tend to be doing with infrastructure dollars is just borrowing it. You know, the gas tax is making up less and less of the revenue stream of the gas of what we pay for federal infrastructure. And so, you know, EVs, I think, have an impact, but, you know, when we're doing a bill and 70% of it's just going to be, you know, from tax increases or tax cuts not related to usage, it has less of an impact than it would if we were still solely relying on a gas tax. Which sadly over the last 20 years, because the purchasing price has eroded of that 18 cents because it's not tied to inflation, you know, the basically more and more general revenue is going into that highway trust fund to keep it afloat.
Wow.
A lot to think about.
Yeah, it's a lot, and it's a challenge. And I mean, we talk about the state side of getting more money for transit, and that's a constant battle that we have as well, is, you know, trying to get some of that general revenue funding, you know, because we know how low transit's funded in Ohio, and that's a push that's been you know, it's sometimes it's like what, you know, trying to push that ball up the hill only to have it roll back down on you. So
Any other comments or questions? Well, we thank you very much, Mr. Baker, and we're looking forward to next April. I like it when we have a breakfast and our local county and city officials can come and be a little bit more involved, because they're part of the solution as well as part of the problem. So thank you for bringing us a very interesting presentation.
no, you're welcome. And yeah, I miss the food and the hospitality at the PARTA breakfast. It's probably one of my favorite events of the year. So I always really appreciate that.
Good.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
In new business, then let's move on to the resolutions. And I think what we're going to do is the same thing that the Finance Committee did. We will introduce the first resolution and discuss it. And much of the discussion is going to be the same as for the second and third resolution. So all the discussion, unless somebody has really something unusual, will relate to the first one. And Claudia and her staff may have questions. So resolution 2020-0501, a resolution by the Portage Area Regional Transportation Authority Board of Trustees authorizing the general manager or her designee to negotiate, enter into, and sign a contract for the production and purchase of urban transit buses, optional equipment, spare parts with Gillig for 5 years beginning in 2021 through 2026. Can we have a motion to accept that resolution?
I'll make that motion.
Jeff made the motion. A second?
A second.
Okay. Karen or Morgan? Okay. Been moved and seconded. Now discussion. Claudia.
Thank you. So as I described in our board report, we have been conducting a RFP process to establish a new 5-year large transit bus contract. You might recall last year we attempted to order or plan to order new buses off of the last contract, and due to COVID and other disruptions, buses we were expecting to receive by the end of last year have not yet been received, and we determined that establishing a new contract would be the best way to go. And so we put out the RFP, received 2 responsive proposals, and that is represented by Gillig and Tesco. In the evaluation process, where we're looking for the best value, the end result was that because we had put the RFP together a little differently than prior years, because we were interested in adding trolley buses to our fleet, we ended up determining that for the urban transit buses, which are the traditional buses that we have now, Gillig provided the most best value and most responsive proposal. And for adding trolley buses to our fleet, that Tesco, the vendor for Hometown Trolley, represented the best value. And so We are recommending an award for the transit buses to Gillig and for the trolley buses to Tesco. That's resolutions number 1 and 2. And resolution 3 is to authorize the purchase of 3 trolley buses from Tesco. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I can turn it over to Brian for any specific questions about the buses themselves, or Rebecca for any of the finance side.
Any questions? Brian, additional comments?
No, I'm more than happy to answer questions regarding the proposal.
Okay, we talked about the trolley buses at the last couple of meetings, and glad this is moving along.
I've got a couple questions. These trolley buses, I guess, remind me, are these going to be replacing current bus routes, or are these going to have special routes throughout Portage County? And then my other question would be, where is the funding coming from? Is this federal dollars, a blend of dollars? Where is it coming from?
Well, I'll answer the first question and I'll let Rebecca answer the second. The first question, it's not as cut and dried as we're just going to put them out as on regular routes, although they will be on regular routes. We have not completely decided how we're going to operate them when it comes to application. For instance, as you're well aware, the downtown area in Kent has changed, with the DORA and the ability of PARTA to operate buses through the downtown area, specifically on the weekends. So we see an opportunity here to offer potentially. I'm not going to go out and say exactly what we're going to do yet, because I'm going to leave a lot of that planning up to Clayton and what he comes up with for surveys and things along those lines. But we see an opportunity to gain parking at the deck and use the trolleys as a resource to draw that parking to the deck, and then get people to and from and around the downtown area, specifically during the times that would be most lucrative for that kind of a transit operation, if you will. But during the day and other times, I think that the trolleys are going to run, and they're going to run quite a bit. I don't know exactly specifically what times and where they're going to run, but they're built in such a way that we can put them on the interurban all during the week or all day long, and we can switch that over to a specific route if we see and we target a specific ridership, which is one of the things we're trying to do is get that choice ridership. We want people to want to ride the trolley. We want them to park at the deck. We want them to get on the trolley. We want them to take the trolley to dinner and go back to the deck. And we want to use that revenue stream, and we want it to be attractive. Transit across the board, as I talked about a while ago when I spoke to you guys, we're all struggling to get back to where we were. So choice ridership is a great big deal for us right now. And we think that the trolleys, and actually everybody I've talked to, I called quite a few people who are operating trolleys, and none of them had a bad experience, and all of them expressed the same thing, that the trolleys brought a lot of interest. In other words, people love to ride the trolleys. I mean, that was one of their things, is to go park in a particular parking lot and take the trolley. I think it was called Coral Reef, which is an island off of North Carolina, or I think South Carolina. They said that they just love it. It's turned things around for them. So it is without a doubt something we're trying to target and maneuver with, but it's not going to be limited to any one aspect of what we do. Anytime we think it's going to add flavor to what we're doing and add some character to what we might be doing, we're going to put them out there, and we're going to use them and get all we can out of them. And Becky, you can answer the grant funding on that.
Yeah, the grant funding is from federal funds. We have been awarded competitive federal grants, I believe, through CMAQ and the 5310 or 5339B Bus and Bus Facilities Program. I think those were the two federal grants. And then we've also applied for match funds through ODOT through the OPT2. We'll find out about that in July.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Other questions? Good questions.
This is RT. I have a question about what fuels these buses.
The three trolleys that we're planning on ordering are going to be CNG trolleys. That right now, I think that's a good fit for us for replacement. The buses are going to be replacing. So we're still working in that direction of trying to get a 50-50 composite on the fleet, if you will. So the buses that we're waiting on coming in that are actually 7 months overdue, I'll be going June, I actually just found this out today, June 21st, 22nd, and 23rd to do the inspection on those buses in California. So we'll have those buses probably end of July, I would say, on delivery, third week of July. End of July, they'll be in service. Those are clean diesels. So we've been kind of alternating a little bit, trying to make sure that we bring in a balance of clean diesel and CNG so that we have the same retirement strategy as we go forward and replacement strategy so that we're not replacing just one type of bus every year consecutively. It'll alternate back and forth between CNG and clean diesel. And keeping in mind, this procurement that we just did also is going to give us an offering of hybrid electric. So we also are going to be able to delve into that world, which will be new for us. But nonetheless, it is, electric's a hot topic right now. So since we don't have infrastructure for it, the hybrid electric and the BAE system is probably the best thing going for us. So it's proven, it's been out there for coming up on about 15 to 20 years. So we won't be like we're guinea pigs on that. So we haven't introduced that yet. We haven't made that leap yet, but we're going to be able to. So we'll see how that goes. And that'll come down to grant funding. I mean, every one of these grants that Becky and her crew goes after, they all get scored with points. So when we talk about this replacement on buses, one of the things we do is contemplate what points we're going to get based on the propulsion systems that we're requesting the money for. So if hybrid electric pulls more points and gives us a better opportunity for replacement money than CNG or clean diesel, we have the opportunity now that we can actually outclass somebody else, you might say, when it comes to asking for the cash. So that was the angle on this whole thing.
Thanks, RT. Good question. Other questions? If you're ready to vote, I'll call on Marcia to call the roll, please.
Do we make a motion for a vote?
Motion.
Okay, I thought we did that. We did.
Motion on the first one.
I'm sorry.
I'll
Okay.
make a motion.
Karen makes the motion that we approve the resolution. And Morgan, were you seconding it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
This for the first one?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Davison,
Yes.
Mr. Childers,
Yes.
Ms. Biergarn,
Yes.
Mr. Mansfield,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Ms. Beck,
Yes.
Mr. Vitale, Kitchen, Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Ms. Harris,
Yes.
Ms. Wise,
Yes. That motion passed. passes. I think somebody has their needs to mute. There's noise coming from somebody. The background. Would you all please mute? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we'll introduce resolution 2021-0502, a very similar resolution. A resolution by the Portage Area Regional Transportation Authority Board of Trustees authorizing the general manager or her designee to negotiate, enter into, and sign a contract for the production and purchase of trolley buses, optional equipment, and spare parts with the Transportation Equipment Sales Corporation, TESCO, for 5 years beginning 2021 through 2026. We have a motion for the approval.
I'll make that.
I'd motion that.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded. It's exactly the same as the other one, only different buses, different companies. Is there any other discussion? If not, then Marcia, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Vitale? Ms. Tipton?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Harris?
Yes.
Ms. Davison?
Yes.
Childers?
Yes.
Ms. Biergard?
Yes.
Ms. Ms. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Mansfield? Mr. Woods?
Yes.
Ms. Wise? Mr. Ginn?
Yes. That motion passes. Thank you. And the third resolution to introduce is resolution 2021-05-03, a resolution by the Portage Area Regional Transportation Authority Board of Trustees authorizing the general manager or her designee to negotiate, enter into, and sign a contract for the production and purchase of 3 CNG trolley buses, optional equipment, and spare parts with Transportation Equipment Sales Corporation, TESCO. We need a motion to approve that resolution.
I'll move.
Debbie made the motion. A second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Marge seconded. Similar to the others, is there any additional information anybody needs? If not, then Marcia, I'll call on the roll call, please.
Ms. Wise? Mr. Vitale? Ms. Tipton?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Harris?
Yes.
Davison?
Yes.
Mr. Childers?
Yes.
Biergard?
Yes.
Ms. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Mansfield? Mr. Woods?
Yes.
Mr. Ginn?
Yes. That motion passes. There's not a need for an executive session, but I have 3 announcements before we leave. The first one, there was not an administration meeting, but I'm calling on Karen Wise if she's interested. Do you have an announcement? Karen, can you unmute? If not, she will have that announcement at the next meeting. The second announcement I have as a request is that because there's not a golf outing this year, the golf outing helps the foundation, and that's not one of the real popular foundations that a lot of people know about, but it's so useful. And you got information about it. So if you have a few extra dollars that you want to give, this would be a great opportunity to provide bus transportation for people who need it and can't afford it. So I would urge you to look at that again. And then the third announcement would be a very brief discussion about our meeting in June. It looks like as of June 2nd, things will change unless the governor makes some change that we're not expecting. We will be able to meet back live in June. Do you feel comfortable with that?
Yes. I do. Yay.
Absolutely.
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 Yes, I do.
But I'm glad to hear that. If anybody feels that that would be uncomfortable at all, before the meeting, if you'll let Claudia know so we can make some arrangement, some seating arrangement, because we do want everybody to feel comfortable. I think even the voting and the things like that have not been as smooth as it would be, and the discussion. I think we've done extremely well over the last year meeting this way, but I, for one, would look forward to getting back together and meeting with you in person in June. Some of you we haven't even met in person.
That's right.
So Claudia, we'll ask you to and your staff to plan that for our next meeting.
Certainly, thank you.
Okay, any other business that needs to come before us?
Just a quick question for people who joined the board during COVID. Is there anything we need to know for in-person meetings, where to go, etc.?
Good question. The PARTA office, there's a main entrance there, and you just walk right in the front door, and straight ahead is the boardroom.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll provide some updated guidance. Although, you know, it's been a while since we've been here. We'll put that in the board packet next month. And if there are any special conditions, we'll let you know about how it'll work once we figure that out.
And I know we like to visit, but we also like to start on time and end on time. So if you want to do socializing, come early, because don't walk in at 2 minutes to 7 and want to chat with everybody, because we will start on time. So you're all friendly people. Come early if you want to. We appreciate the AMET's presentation tonight, and Michelle, thank you for joining us. Do you have anything to add from the attorney's office?
I don't have anything to add. Good luck with moving forward with your in-person meetings. It's an exciting time to be feeling a little bit more normal.
Yes.
Okay, then I will ask for a motion for adjournment.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
Okay, Mark,
second.
Seconded by Jeff. All in favor say aye or wave or something.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Okay, the motion passes and the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Forward to seeing you next month.
Good night.
Goodbye.
Good night.